Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's Mucking Going On Free. It's Wednesday, which means a new video, and today I am going to be talking about My Mum Tracy Beaker, both the TV show and the book. If you are one of my regular subscribers and you may be thinking, oh, why is there no the next step based content today? Don't worry, I have obviously guessed the reference on Sunday, which is coming out, and on Friday I'm releasing a lost and found themed video, so you guys get your weekly supply of Mucking Going On Free as usual. But I wanted to react and review My Mum Tracy Beaker, so that is what I'm doing today. Also, I've just turned off my radiator, so just like when I reacted to the trailer, it might like bang and clack and whatever when it's cooling down, so if any of those noises happen, I'm sorry. If you are brand new and you're only watching this video because you've seen Tracy Beaker in the title and you're interested, then hi, my name is Alicia and I usually make content based on The Next Step, which is a CBBC show currently airing in its 7th season. Well, the 7th season has finished now. We're hoping for a season 8, hashtag season 8 when though, and hopefully we will get one. But I'm a big CBBC fan. I've been watching it ever since I was young. I'm now 22 and still watching a lot of shows like Jamie Johnson, The Next Step, like I said, Mallory Towers I loved, Hetty Feather I loved, Tracy Beaker I obviously loved. I'm a Tracy Beaker stan. I've been watching since the story of Tracy Beaker. So when I heard that Jacqueline Wilson's book My Mum Tracy Beaker was being turned into a TV adaptation, I was very excited for it. So I actually didn't have the book with me when I reacted to the trailer, and I said that I wanted to get it soon. So I was about to order it that night I filmed, and then my boyfriend was like, no, you can't order it. And I was like, why? I need to read this. And he was like, fine, do you want your early Valentine's Day present? So he then gave me the book, and that was my Valentine's Day present. So I have read it. I read it in the space of 3 nights and I really did like it. I have read it before. I read it when it first initially came out, but I basically forgotten everything. So I made a lot of notes as to what I wanted to see in the TV adaptation from the book, and I'm going to talk about it chronologically based on the TV show. Sorry if that's confusing. So first off, what I'm going to say is all the stuff that I wanted to see in the show. Then I'm going to go through the show, and I watched the movie edition. There's 2 options on BBC iPlayer, either the 3 separate episodes or you watch it all in one. I watched it all in one, and I'm just going to go through it chronologically, say my thoughts on every bit, and I'm going to do a lot of comparisons, like in the book they did this, but in the TV show they did this, or in the TV show they do this, but it's not even in the book, and just weigh up my thoughts on what everything was and give my overall thoughts. I said thoughts twice then. Okay, so for the things that I definitely wanted to see, I wanted to see definitely the scene at the beginning, well, towards the beginning, where Jess gets pushed off the bench in the Peace Garden, I think it's called, and Tracy gets really mad about it and defensive of her daughter. Obviously, that's Jess. And I really wanted to see the scene where Jess, well, she thinks that the teacher's never put up her artwork, and she sees the teacher doing it just as Tracy starts arguing with her, because it really reminded me of the story of Tracy Beaker, where Tracy paints the picture of her and Cam sees it on parents' evening that she gets tricked into. Another thing I really wanted to see was Jess and Tyrone's friendship develop. I really liked the involvement of Tyrone in the book, and also I liked that he was, well, in my mind he was I can't remember the actual description or whether I inferred it wrong, but I imagined Tyrone to be quite tall, stocky, kind of a teenager, and Jess being slightly younger, or if they are in the same class, which I don't remember, but I never took it as they were in the same class. I just thought they were in the same school. So I really wanted to see the difference between them and them slowly becoming friends, just like they do in the book with a lot of different instances. I wanted to see also Tyrone's home life, so how both his mom and his mom's boyfriend mistreat him, and I thought, you know what, they probably will do that, because in shows like The Dumping Ground and Tracy Beaker Returns, we've had storylines like that. Like, for example, Jodie was mistreated by her family, and that's a really deep storyline actually. They say a lot of things without saying it, and that's what I wanted it to be if they did want to dull it down and not just be like, oh, Tyrone gets hit by his mom and hit by his mom's boyfriend. Like, if they just subtly mentioned it, I would have liked that as well. I also did want to see the flat that they lived in, and obviously we've seen in the trailer that we do see the flat, but I wanted to see the little things like all of their ornaments and their treasures that they find in charity shops, and the mold in the corners of the walls, and how it's not a great place to live, but it's their great place because it's their home. And I also wanted to see Cam and all of her foster kids, like the pregnant teenager. So, like I said, I watched the movie version. It's about 86 minutes long. I really enjoyed it overall. I thought it was really good and the acting was really good. I love seeing Dani Harmer back on screen, and I just think she's a natural at not just being Tracy but acting, and there's just such a good warm vibe that comes from her. I thought the girl that plays Jess was also really, really good. I've actually wrote somewhere in my notes on my laptop that I really want her to get an award. There's certain scenes where I thought she was amazing, and she really pulled on my heartstrings. So the first thing that I noticed was that the opening voiceovers are directly from the book. Like, I remembered it exactly as they were saying it, which I really liked. I think that gives a nice note to the fact that it is based on a book. I also liked that there was a very much warm and family vibe. I thought the colours used and like the temperature of shots and just the overall vibe was very, very nice. You automatically became quite invested in Tracy and Jess and their little family. It wasn't kind of an outsider looking in, you felt like part of them. Generally, the little references that we have to Tracy Beaker and the story of Tracy Beaker Returns and all of that stuff, I think is really nice for us older fans. So not just for the new people that would have been like, oh, what's this new show on Tracy Beaker, but how Jess and Tracy say about hay fever. Like, obviously when Tracy was younger, she always used to pretend she wasn't crying, it was just hay fever.
She never ever cries. She only gets hay fever sometimes.
And there's other references like that throughout, but I just really liked how they didn't make it cringy and stating the obvious, like, oh, I don't actually have hay fever, I'm just crying. Like, we don't need to know that because us OG fans already know the meaning of that reference. But then what we saw was Tyrone, and like when I first watched the trailer, I didn't really make the connection that that could be Tyrone because this boy is quite small, and I didn't get the same vibe that I got from Tyrone in the book that I got to the movie, and I keep saying movie, but it is a TV show. So in the book, Tyrone to me just came off as someone very stocky, very tall, very aggressive and intimidating. Tyrone is a much bigger boy than Jess. Like, that's why I got the impression that he was older than her for sure, not just in the same class. So the scene in the Peace Garden, she doesn't actually make Tyrone's nose bleed. He says things like, why do you always have your head in a book, geeky? Hey, I'm talking to you. So it's more like aggressive. It's not just playful teasing. Yeah, she just keeps her head down and she really doesn't like it, and it's actually Tracy that goes off at them, and that's why Tracy goes in and complains about the bullying, because Jess hasn't fought back for herself and she's obviously scared of Tyrone. It's worth also noting that in the Peace Garden, Tyrone pushes Jess and hurts her. It isn't just innocent banter. It's actually later on when Jess is running away from Tracy that she accidentally knocks into Tyrone, and that's what makes his nose bleed. I don't know, it didn't seem to have the same effect for me, and especially when Tracy then storms in, which I do love because I said earlier that's what I really wanted to see. It didn't make as much sense because she was going on about bullying and stuff, but it was just Tyrone. Basically, it seemed like he was teasing her, and then Jess got out of control. So I feel like the one situation didn't negate the... is negate the right word? I don't know. Like, it didn't make the other one seem necessary. They kind of didn't match, in my opinion. Moving on from that, though, I did really like the scene in the show where Tracy is at the gym. She says something under her breath. I think it's like, oh, who goes here? Millionaires? Just little comments like that really reminded me of the old school Tracy Beaker, how she was cheeky and usually out of line and saying things that embarrassed other people, and she didn't really have much like grace about her in public scenarios. So I really liked that. I also liked how Jess immediately got protective of Tracy. So when this guy started showing interest, she was like, no thank you. I think that's just good that from the offset, Jess established her position and her relationship with her mum. And then we saw my woman, Cam. I love Cam so much. Initially what I wrote here is that I really wanted to see Cam in the house full of kids at first glance. So then I wrote that I don't think I've ever seen a nightclub shown on CBBC or someone ask someone what they're drinking.
Beer, please.
Me that too.
So I really liked that, how it wasn't kiddified and it wasn't just instead made a restaurant or something like that. It had an adult feel to it, and it just felt very like Tracy Beaker had grown up. I've also put, it's a completely random thing, but Cam having a modern touchscreen phone and not her little flip up one that she has in the story of Tracy Beaker just made me giggle for no reason. I just wanted to mention that. But then when we see Tracy and Sean at the chicken shop, it really made my heart warm. I was like, yes, my little Tracy, look at her on a date. Like, even though I read the book and I knew what was going to happen, I was like, yes, this is so cute. So once again, I'm then going to talk about Tyrone and Jess's friendship, and I feel like it just came out of nowhere. It was the scene where he was basically asking like, oh, can I come round? And Jesse's just like, yes, and Tracy says, yeah, sure, come round this Saturday. Whereas in the book, it's Cam who's the first guest to come round, and I think that's just how it should be, and it's quite respectable. Like, Tracy's moving out, and not just moving out, but moving out into this huge house. The first person you want to come around is like your family, not just the random boy from school that you're suddenly friends with, because they hadn't even had that many scenes together building up their friendship. Whereas in the book, obviously it starts as a bullying friend relationship, then Jess accidentally bumps into him, and Tyrone says that he's going to have her back from now on. He defends her in the playground one time, I'm pretty sure. He's nice to her. They live on the same block and they see each other quite often. Jess sees him smoking a cigarette the once. I don't know if that's after that happens, but he sees him smoking a cigarette, and he's young, so he's not meant to be doing that. He says about his mum, and she knows about his mum and the relationship that she has with him. So it's a lot more well-rounded than it was in the show. I felt like it was kind of out of nowhere. And when you move into somewhere, you don't want to just have people around straight away, let alone just your friends. Like, you'd be happy having your mum around like Cam, but I just felt like it was a bit odd. Oh yeah, I've also written, there's a scene where Tyrone, when he's smoking the cigarette, he says that he hasn't had anything to eat because Jess is going to the shop for Tracy, and he's like, oh, get me something from the shop, and Jess ends up taking him back home with her, and Tracy gives him some proper breakfast. Scenes like that I think would have been so heartwarming, because then Sean comes around as well, and I don't know, it just needed more depth for me. So once we started to see Sean's house, I was very glad to see that they had Rosalie, or Rosalie. I read it as Rosalie in the book, but they pronounce it Rosalie. So she is Sean's housekeeper. There is a lot more to Rosalie, I'm gonna say Rosalie, in the book. Like, we hear about her family still being in the Philippines, and her husband is in England, but they don't see each other very often because they have conflicting work hours. She goes home for 3 weeks in the summer, and Sean pays for her plane ticket and stuff. So I felt like there could have been more explored with Rosalie, but for the sake of it only being a 3-episode long series and just quite a short movie overall, I can see why they didn't bother to go into Rosalie's characters too much, but I'm glad they did have little references. Like later on, Rosalie has a chocolate cake that she makes when Tracy has Cam and Carly round.
Just wait until you try Rosalie's special chocolate cake. Best in the world.
So just little references like that, because that is in the book as well. So maybe if there's like 5 episodes in total, that would have been good, because we would have been able to go into Tyrone more, Jess and Tyrone's relationship, and also Rosalie. Rosalie's background I also think is important because it shows a contrast in situations, especially later on when Tracy's deciding whether to go back to like her grubby little flat with the damp coming through the walls, or stay with Sean in this big fancy house where she never has to work again. I think that Rosalie's role would be quite important there, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. I also liked how Jess continued to call Sean Godfrey, just like she does in the book. It's a very big point as to like she's not letting her guard down, and she's addressing him as this person. She's not addressing him as her friend. So I think as soon as you stop calling him Sean Godfrey, that kind of is Jess's way of saying, oh, I'm getting more comfortable with you now. So I'm glad that they kept that in the show, that she's still calling him his full name. Now, then we have Alfie the dog. One thing I really liked about the book, I keep picking it up because I like to have something in my hands while I'm talking, but one thing I really liked about the book was that Cam was the one who took Jess to Battersea Dogs Home, and they picked out Alfie. Alfie had an immediate liking to Jess, and Cam said that the only way that they're going to be able to have it is if Jess lives with Sean, because they're not allowed to have dogs in their tower block. And that is kind of Jess's comfort blanket when it comes to possibly moving in with Sean. Because obviously she doesn't want to go, but she knows that if she does go, she's probably going to be able to have her dog. I thought that when Sean was the one to bring in this dog that he knows Jess has been looking at, it was kind of manipulative, and I didn't like the angle that the show actually took with it, because now Jess's thing that she's wanted for so long is at Sean Godfrey's house, and it's Sean Godfrey's dog. So that kind of puts Jess in a situation where, well, now I've got to live here because my dog is here, not, oh, I feel more comfortable coming if I can bring my dog with me as a comfort blanket. So I didn't actually like that they did this in the show. I much would have preferred it if Cam was the one who took Jess, and Jess then moved in with Sean and Tracy because she has her dog and she feels more comfortable doing it that way. So then Jess, Tracy and Sean have the meal together, the steak and the chips, And I liked the scene. It was pretty true to the book until at the very end when Tracy and Jess walk out. Jess sticks her tongue at Sean. I didn't like that because it changed the tone and changed Jess's behaviour. It was originally defensive, like she didn't like being told what to do all of a sudden by this man that she doesn't even like. She didn't like how he was controlling everything. He was making her eat meat, and she, in the book, she says she doesn't really eat meat anyway, and she doesn't like it. So I kind of wish they'd said that as well. It wasn't just Jess being a fussy eater. She just doesn't eat meat generally. But Jess sticking her tongue out for me seemed like she did it on purpose, and she was like, haha, you're not having my mum. That's not what she meant by shouting at him and not wanting to tell her what to do. She's just very defensive of her mum and protective, so I didn't really like the involvement of that action. Also, following that scene, then Sean drives up with the car, and in the book Tracy asks for the car, so I thought this was a little bit confusing because she asked for the car originally because Sean says, what kind of car would you like, so that you don't have to take my car and stuff. And she says she wants the pink Cadillac just like her mom, well, she used to imagine her mom having and stuff, but then Sean just brings this random car, and I was confused of how he'd know about that. And then he proposed. Well, I say it confused me, but I guess it's not that confusing because, like, well, in the book anyway, Tracy, this is the kind of thing that I'm going off. Tracy and Sean do everything kind of behind Jess's back in the book, whereas in the TV show it's all pretty obvious and it's kind of clear as day what's happening. And she's like, oh yeah, we might be living with Sean soon and everything because he's asked me to marry him. And that's like dead at the beginning of the story, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I don't know, I prefer how it played out in the book, honestly, so it was behind Jess's back, because that makes more sense for her behaviour to be more standoffish and feel like she's not involved and feel like she's getting moved from her old house to this new house without being asked if she's okay with anything. In the show it seems very much like Jess is just being a brat, basically, because everything's happening pretty clear and she's still acting like she hasn't been involved when she has. So it's kind of a mix of the two storylines that have gone on, and I don't think it's worked out properly. I have put though, when they say about Tyrone missing football and it being a bit odd and Jess and Sean go to see him, I liked how they had his mom in the thing and just showed a bit of his home life, like everything looked a bit scarce and they'd clearly been selling things. I'm pretty sure that they sold his uniform as well, like his football kit, for money. And Jess says that the boyfriend sells things for you know what.
Tyrone says he takes the money for, you know.
Kids like that, they just never stand a chance.
He loves training with you. He wouldn't miss it unless...
Unless what?
So I was kind of glad that this kind of darker home life was shown. It's like a typical Tracy Beaker thing, like you have things on a high and then you kind of brought back to reality, like, oh, this is how some people live. But generally I think the placement of that scene was wrong, and I think it should have been done earlier. So before Tyrone even asks to come round, just like it is in the book, we see he has a bad home life and therefore we feel more empathy towards him and we're like, oh, I really hope that Jess invites him round and that they become friends and that they're positive for each other. So I just think the placement was wrong. Then I want to talk about how Sean doesn't want any of Tracy and Jess's ornaments and stuff on display, even though he wants them living there. I'm glad that they kept this in. In the book, it is the same, but then later on in a scene where they go back to Marlborough Tower to pick up Tyrone, Tracy's like, oh, shall we grab some ornaments from upstairs? And Sean's like, no, you're not doing that, you're not cluttering up my house. So I'm glad that they kept that, and I think it shows his true character, really. Like he wants to seem like he has a happy family, but he doesn't actually want the things that go with a happy family. Oh, I have also put though, because of Sean saying that he doesn't want Tracy to go up and get any of the ornaments while they're over there by the tower block, Jess then tells Cam when she's staying the night at hers, and Cam gets really defensive. She's like, right, well, we're going round then to your flat, because she has a spare key. So they let themselves into Tracy's flat and it starts to get more damp and mouldy. So they go in and Jess sees in the back of Tracy's wardrobe when she's picking stuff out for her old clothes from when she was younger, and I thought that would have been really cute and like homage to the early story of Tracy Beaker days. Like she could have had the stripy black and red top in there. She could have had, what does she wear in, like the plain red t-shirt that Tracy wears in the very first episode. Just different, like even the jumper, you know, that jumper where Tracy does a whole full face of makeup.
Now Tracy, come and meet Cam. Tracy's the girl I told you about who wants to become a writer.
Tracy, a writer? Yeah, That's really gonna happen.
If that was in the back of the wardrobe and Jess is like, let's take this for Mum, and Cam like has a moment of nostalgia remembering it, I think that would have been a really nice addition to the story, and also it would have given us more Jess and Cam and their relationship. So then Miss Justine Littlewood appeared. I was quite nervous when I read it in the book that Justine would be in it. Obviously we saw her in the trailer, but I was like, I hope that they kind of do her well. But she hasn't aged a bit. Just gonna say that right now. I really liked how they had the throwbacks and the references, like the proper old school animations and the actual clips from the old show. Oh yes, also in the television version, Justine says basically she's having infertility issues. I thought that was really nice. So that's quite an adult thing to put in.
So have you got any kids? No, we tried, but it didn't work out. So no mini Justine for me.
It happens to a lot of people, and also it kind of showed a softer side to Justine. But one thing in the book that they didn't include was that Justine's dad's got dementia. So I really kind of wish that they'd include both of these points. I just thought that would have been nice, you know, show that Justine has a heart somewhere. And then we have Carly and Cam coming round. And a big problem that I have with them coming around so late is that Justine Littlewood has already been to the house. Tyrone's been to the house. And Cam hasn't even come round yet, and neither has Carly. Like, and also Cam was baking yet again. I really liked how Tracy was looking out of the window like old times, and she said how she was late, and she told her time too early, expecting her to come late anyway, but she still came later than the expected time. It was a throwback to old times. It was sad. It got on your heartstrings. In the book, that doesn't happen, but I'm glad that they had it in the show. Like in the book instead, Tracy tries to bake a cake for her mum because she knows that she's coming round, and she gets really stressed and she does it all wrong. And I feel like both things, like her looking out the window and telling her a time earlier than it's meant to be, and baking a cake, both has the same kind of effect. Like Tracy puts in all this effort for her mum and doesn't get anything back from it, or she always tries too hard and it doesn't go right. So I actually liked what they did in the show with her looking out the window. I thought it was such a small gesture, but it meant a lot. And then we had an interaction between Carly and Cam, which I don't know whether it was homophobic or just phobic against LGBTQ plus communities, but that's how I interpreted it when I saw it, because obviously I've read the book and I know that Cam spends a lot of time with Jess's teacher, Mary, but it's not in the book that they're together actually, so I'll talk about that a little bit later. But like the way that Carly said, maybe if you didn't have your lifestyle, you'd have children by now.
Oh, so I see you've poisoned them both against me. You know, it's such a shame. If it wasn't for your lifestyle, you could have had your own children.
She did. Me.
The way I interpreted that was that Cam was gay or within the LGBTQ plus community and couldn't naturally have children, and that's what Carly was telling, like being hard on her about, or because she was so busy as a writer she couldn't have children. But I don't see why Carly would make such a point of her being a writer. So I don't know, and the way that Cam kind of recoiled from Carly after she said that, I took it as a homophobic comment personally. Obviously we don't know, but with the wedding that happens later on in the show, and what we know that Cam is in a relationship with a woman, Mary, so I think Carly is homophobic. And like I said, in the book, Cam isn't in a relationship with Mary, pretty sure, but they go hiking together, they go to the spa together, they spend like every day with each other, they're constantly texting and calling each other. Jess tries to phone Cam and she's on the phone with Mary instead. So I don't know why Jacqueline Wilson didn't make it clear that yes, she's interested, because even Jess towards the end of the book still is calling Mary Cam's friend. They're more than friends. Like, she doesn't even say best friend, they're definitely more than friends, and I don't know why it isn't made obvious. Also, there's this conversation that Cam and Jess have where Cam blatantly says that she's never really fancied blokes, and bear in mind that I don't think Gary was in the book universe, he was just in the TV universe, so it's quite clear that I think Cam is interested in Mary as more than a friend, and I think the book should have stated it more obviously, so that it could have been canon. So I liked in the show how they did make it obvious that Cam and Mary had something between them. And then there was a scene where Rosalie was chopping carrots and she chopped the same carrot about 10 times. It's just something I've written down. It's not that big of a deal, but it made me laugh.
To play goalie?
Yeah. Mum, please.
Come on. Okay, and then we saw Sean kissing Justine Littlewood outside the pub. Oh my god. Like, that doesn't happen in the book. It's just the text messages, literally. So I was like, oh wow, it's this big. In the book, all that happens is Jess goes down to the study and she tries to find a program that she can give Tyrone to use for his project, the project that they talk about at the very beginning of the show, how they talk about inspiring people, and she stumbles across the phone and sees the messages, and then immediately after that Tracy comes in and sees them. So it's not dragged out as much as it is in the show, and I prefer the show actually. I think it had much more of an effect, that Jess was keeping a secret from Tracy, and she went and saw where they were meeting up and saw Justine kissing Sean. Like, it was more set in stone, whereas the texts were kind of just, oh, he's just sent a few texts to Justine Littlewood that were out of line and he was cheating on her, but only through text. It was very much cheating in the show. And yeah, I thought his excuses when they were by the car were just so dumb. Like, oh, I made one mistake. One mistake isn't arranging a date and kissing them. It's not a mistake to in the open as well. Like, Sean has all these paparazzis and he's in the middle of the street kissing another woman that isn't Tracy. Like, he has a lot of nerve. When Jess is crying and shouts at Sean by the car, I was like, oh my god, give this girl an award. I thought it was so good.
Nothing happened. It was one mistake.
Liar. You ruined everything. You spoiled it all.
Yes. Look, Jess, I am so sorry. I swear your mum, she means the world to me. I would never hurt her.
But you did.
No. Jess, you have to understand I was a footballer. Some of these women, they just...
What?
I've never had to say no before.
And then, even when he's explaining himself, Sean said, Justine's a nice girl. She's good looking. What? Are you trying to apologise or not? I was in disbelief. I was scoffing. I was like, are you for real? Yeah, and then he blamed Tracy. Yes, and he says, oh, is anyone good enough for Tracy Beaker? Freaking anyone who doesn't cheat is good enough for Tracy Beaker, I think. Is better than you anyway. But I definitely had more of a hatred towards him in the show than I did in the book. I feel like the show did it a lot better with building it up and up and up and up, and having Jess keep this massive secret, and having Sean make all these snide digs at Tracy. It always seemed like there was someone else on his mind. So the show did that really well. And also, a small thing I noticed was that Jess stopped saying Sean after that. After he found out that he was cheating on her mum, she started calling him Sean Godfrey again, and I just think that is very symbolic of their relationship, so I liked that. And then when they're in the private study room or the office and Jess was crying, I wrote, I think I love Jess more than Tracy. I was just so attached to Jess. I was like, please don't cry, darling. And then Tracy got angry, just like in the book. The exact same things happen. She punches the desk in the book, she punches the cupboard in the show. I like how Tracy's anger came out a little bit more. Like, she'd been doing all this kickboxing, but this hurt her so much that her anger just had to come out somewhere. Oh yes, and then when they're back home and Tracy gets the phone call from Sean and she throws the phone at the wall, I was just sat in silence. I was like, oh my, it was so deep. My heart couldn't take it anymore. And then we have Rosalie as a character, and she has two different approaches when the cheating thing comes out and she's made aware of it. So in the book, Rosalie seems very quick to be like, oh, Tracy, it doesn't matter that much, like, can't you just deal with it? She even says, what is the quote? I'm sure I wrote down the quote. Oh no, she just says, would you rather be poor again? And I think, like, initially I was like, he's just cheated on her and isn't showing any remorse. But Rosalie's working so hard to provide for her family both in the UK and the Philippines. It just showed a big difference in, like, some people just put up with it because they have to, and it gave Tracy a perspective and also the reader a different perspective, because I did rethink it then. I was like, and in the show I like how Rosalie turned on Sean quite instantly, and she even called him Sean Godfrey.
Then you've done a very stupid thing, Sean Godfrey.
And I thought that was quite symbolic as well. So I don't know which one I prefer, but I like both of them, and I like how you could interpret the book as being like Rosalie would do something different because of her income and her lifestyle. So yeah. So in the show, when Tracy and Jess do go home, I like how it was done in the show better than the book, honestly. In the book, it doesn't seem as sad and as depressing as it is in the show, whereas I really do feel like they executed it very well in the show. Tracy's very numb and hollow, and she's depressed, basically. I think she is depressed. Like, she stops eating, Jess gets worried about her, she just lies on the sofa all the time, she rests all the time, she sleeps all the time, and then eventually Cam has them live with her so she can look after them. I think it was done really, really nicely, whereas in the book it's more like, oh yeah, I'm sad, but we'll get through it, Jess, and they kind of carry on as normal. That's how I interpreted it anyway, so I just preferred how the show did it. Oh, and the sad Tracy Beaker theme tune while that sad scene was happening had me, like, I was teary, not gonna lie. And then we have the scene in the cafe where Tracy fly kicks Justine, and that is also in the book, so that's the same. I liked it. Do you know what? I feel like it is a very natural thing that Tracy would do, because sometimes, like, throwing a drink at someone isn't enough, and if someone that I've not liked for so long of my childhood has just taken away, well, I mean, Justine didn't take it away, Sean did, but yeah, fly kick her all you want, Tracy. But overall, I do kind of wish it wasn't Justine that had cheated on Sean. I do wish it had been this Sandy Forthright person, Forthright, in the book, who Jess immediately gets skeptical about because there's an article that comes out and Tracy just dismisses it and is like, you know, don't worry, it's just an old article. I don't know, I would like it if Justine and Tracy just were on neutral terms. I don't see Justine as the kind of person that would cheat and have an affair with somebody to spite another person, and knowing that the other person used to be her friend and that they were on relatively good terms with each other, especially someone who's grown up in care with an unsettled, like, family life. I don't think Justine would put Jess through that. I don't know, I don't feel like it's very Justine, but that's how it's written in the book. So that's what they did in the show. I just would have preferred if it was someone else. Let me know what you think down below. I do want to say though, I prefer the confrontation that they have in the book once they leave the cafe, because Justine seems to not be as remorseful. In the book she says, oh, I am calling the police, and then Tracy and Jess run from sirens that they can hear, but then they realise that it's just an ambulance for somebody else. Whereas in the show, Justine seems remorseful, but she clearly wasn't remorseful because she came into the cafe wanting a reaction, and she went out with Sean Godfrey and she had an affair with him. So it kind of got muddled for me, and I kind of wish that they just kept it as Justine did what she did and she's not regretting it that much anyway. And then when we were at Cam's house, we saw the foster kids, which I loved. I was hoping we would see them, so I was satisfied. And we also saw the pregnant teenager that she's fostering. I didn't think they'd do that because teenage pregnancy is quite a controversial thing to put, let alone on CBBC. So I'm glad that they included the pregnant teenager. And I'm also glad that they showed Tracy still being down. She wasn't just automatically better because she was with Cam. She wasn't eating still. She was sitting by herself. She was being reclusive. I just think it showed mental health very, very well, and also showed just the effect that it's had on Tracy. And then Mary and Cam. Oh my gosh, Mary and Cam holding hands at the dinner table. I was like, oh, because in the book they don't do that. They literally just keep going on these outings and stuff. It's never said that Cam's girlfriend is Mary or Mary's girlfriend is Cam. Like, when they held hands, I was like, yes, we're going to confirm it, at least in the TV universe. Anyway, I was happy because you can't read the book and not think there might be something more than friendship going on here. So I was glad that they made that decision. And then Carly comes in, and Carly, she doesn't come in the book, but she's such a bad mom. And I'm sure she says to Tracy that, oh, I've been such a bad mom. And Tracy's like, no, you haven't. She has. Like, what kind of mom goes up to their kid when they've just got out of an engagement with their future husband and says, are you sure you can find anyone better? Maybe you should just go back to him. Like, have some faith in your daughter, man. And then she's like, oh, I wish I'd been better for you. And then she says, but you were such a tough child to do, or what does she say? Oh, she said that she was hard to love.
Sean Godfrey may not be perfect, but you really think you can do any better?
Yes, I do. You weren't always easy to love.
But what? And then we have the cardboard house. The cardboard house is different in the book. It's like just a little cardboard house on a table that they make, and then Jess accidentally spills a drink over it and it goes all soggy and everything gets ruined, and Jess starts crying, and Tracy's just like, it's just a cardboard house, you can just make another one. And Jess goes off, and it obviously is all getting to her that they've lost everything basically that they had, and things haven't gone back to normal like she thought that they would if they just broke up. I like the cardboard house that they made in Tracy's actual flat. I thought it was so cute and quite artsy, you know, but I didn't like how Jess involved Sean in it. I didn't really understand why. It seemed like Jess kind of flipped immediately. Like Tracy went from saying how sad she was to going to Sean's house and getting him to help her with something. I didn't really get it. I would have just liked it if Jess went home by herself and Tracy was initially like, Jess, you can't walk across here by yourself. I don't trust you or anything like that. You have to stay safe. And then she opens the door and it's the big cardboard house. That just would have been nicer for me. I just didn't really get why Sean was involved and why he had to come back, because he doesn't come back in the book. And then we get the zoom to the church, and when I saw it, I was like ready to kick off. I was actually, look, I've typed on my notes, I've said, I hoped and hoped and hoped Tracy would say no to Sean. I don't know why they're getting married after all of this, and why Jess went and got Sean. No thank you, he was awful. That's what I wrote. And then I heard Tracy saying what she was saying, and I was like, wait, what? And then I saw Tracy in a suit, not her dress that she'd been trying on earlier in the show, and I was like, what? And then it was Cam and Mary's wedding, and I was like, what? Because that's not in the book. They're not even holding hands in the book. So I was like, oh my gosh. I thought it was so cute. Like, I'm a Cam stan. I love the inclusivity and the diversity. I didn't really like that Sean was there, honestly. And then we have Peter, and Peter is in the book, but it's a different scenario. So in the book, it's Peter's birthday, and Tracy's like, oh, it's my birthday too. And then they have the shared experience where they blow out the candles like they used to when they were little, and they cut the cake. I didn't really get why Peter was, oh no, Peter was Mary's friend, wasn't he? But I think it would have had more impact on me if Peter was played by the same actor, but obviously things changed. Maybe he just didn't want to be involved. Maybe he couldn't be involved for whatever reason. It didn't really have an effect on me. I don't feel like he needed to be in it. And then Jess and Tracy go to the beach, and I didn't think they'd do the beach scene because they had the wedding, and I presume, well, the wedding isn't even in the book, so I was like, well, nothing else can be in it then. But they did the beach after the wedding, and I'm glad that they kept in the little shop that said the dumping ground, and it had all the little ceramics in it, just like it is in the book. I thought that was really cute. Like, even like this, the metaphor of that, like it's the dumping ground with all these little treasures in, and the actual dumping ground that Tracy refers to is a care home with all these kids in that are little treasures themselves. I thought that was a really nice touch in the book and in the show. Yeah, I just thought it was a very cute ending, honestly. And it says to be continued, and I'm pretty sure people have been telling me there's another book called The Beaker Girls. I'm not sure that follows My Mum Tracy Beaker, but I might have to get that and read it just in case they produce that as well. But I really enjoyed the series slash movie. I thought it was good. There were definitely parts that I felt could have been improved if there was more time put into it, like more parts, more episodes. But obviously we have COVID as an issue. I don't know whether it was cut short because of that, or whether it was short and sweet to kind of prioritize the scenes that they wanted to get done for sure. Maybe when it's to be continued, they can explore different things more if they do continue it. So I recommend it highly if you haven't seen it already. I'm going to leave the link to BBC iPlayer down below, the movie version, so you can watch it in full if you haven't already. Let me know what you thought down below. It definitely wasn't a disappointment to me. It wasn't a letdown. It wasn't a bad TV adaptation. It never is really a Tracy Beaker adaptation or Jacqueline Wilson adaptation. It was very good. It stands up for itself in its own right. Without the book, I think it's fine. There's definitely things in the book that I prefer, like I said, but there's definitely things in the TV version that I prefer as well. So it gets like, I don't even know what I'd rate it out of 10, but it's not bad. I'd watch it again. I will watch it again, most likely. I'm going to watch it after I finish filming this with my boyfriend because he hasn't seen it yet. And yeah, that's basically all I had to say. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you agree with anything, you want to add anything, ask me my opinion on things. I might have forgotten anything to mention. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Comment, like I said, and make sure you subscribe. And I'll see you soon, guys. Bye. Oh, also, I'll leave the link to the book on different book websites if you want to go buy it because it's really good. I like it.